Good morning. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. I'm Barry Bryson, and we're continuing our study of other Psalms. These are Psalms that are written by Moses, Solomon, Heman, Ethan, and the sons of Korah, not by David, who wrote the most, Anonymous, who wrote the second most, or Asaph, who wrote the third most. David wrote almost exactly half, 74, maybe 75 of 150 of the Psalms in the hymn book. We've said in the past in our studies that there are 5 hymn books gathered in the book of Psalms. Each begins with a wisdom psalm, and each ends with a prayer. And Psalm 90 is a wisdom psalm, of course, and it begins book 4 of the 5 books of Psalms. They're not of equal length. Um, um, this this psalm that we're going to look at today, Psalm 72, ends book 2. Psalm 73, which we will not have to. We're not looking at Asaph's psalms. It's a wisdom psalm that begins book 3. And Psalm 72 is not necessarily a praise song. What it is a prayer to God, and it is a prayer to God about Solomon. And so let's look at Psalm 72. The superscription, which is in the Hebrew text, just says of Solomon, or it could mean to Solomon or for Solomon. There's a prepositional phrase there that can mean different things depending on the context. And then Solomon. Um, it's like the Song of Songs, which we call Song of Solomon. The Shir HaShirim, the Song of Songs, which is Solomon's. Solomon, in my mind, probably did not write Song of Solomon, but it's dedicated to him, and it ought to be. But anyway, he ought to read it and learn about the love you can have when one man and one woman love each other instead of having 700 wives and 300 concubines. Um, um, I'm just saying that this may be by Solomon, or maybe it's for Solomon, because it has a curious last line. Verse 20, the last line of the psalm is, "The prayers of David, the son of Jesse, are here ended." I think one of two things is true about this psalm. Either this is David's last psalm, and he has written it as a prayer for God to bless and shepherd his son through his reign, or Solomon, at the beginning of his reign, has collected his father's psalms, and he has written this psalm at the end as sort of an epilogue, a handing off of the baton. And it's a prayer to God, make me a good king like my father was a good king. So I think this is written at the time when Solomon is beginning to reign. And we know that when God came to him and asked him to make a request, that he did ask for wisdom. And we know how good a king he was at the beginning. We also know how far he fell. But I think we also know from the book of Ecclesiastes, which I am convinced was written by Solomon, that at the end of his life, um, he had real perspective on all things and was right with the Lord. Okay, let's read Psalm 72. It's either by David about Solomon, for Solomon, or by Solomon about himself as he says goodbye to his dad and begins his own reign. Give the king thy judgments, O God, and thy righteousness to the king's son. May he judge thy people with righteousness, and thine afflicted with justice. Let the mountains bring peace to the people, and the hills in righteousness. May he vindicate the afflicted of the people, save the children of the needy, and crush the oppressor. Let them fear thee while the sun endures, as long as the moon throughout all generations. May he come down like rain upon the mown grass, like showers that water the earth. In his days may the righteous flourish, and abundance of peace till the moon is no more. May he also rule from sea to sea, and from the river to the end of the earth. Let the nomads of the desert bow before him, and his enemies lick the dust. Let the kings of Tarshish and of the islands bring presents. The kings of Sheba and Seba offer him gifts, and let all the kings bow down before him, all nations serve him. For he will deliver the needy when he cries for help, the afflicted also, and him who has no helper. He will have compassion on the poor and the needy, and the lives of the needy he will save. He will rescue their life from oppression and violence, and their blood will be precious in his sight. So may he live, and may the gold of Sheba be given to him, and let them pray for him continually. I love that line. Let them pray for him continually. Let them bless him all day long. May there be abundance of grain in the earth on top of the mountains. Its fruit will wave like the cedars of Lebanon, and may those from the city flourish like the vegetation of the earth. May his name endure forever. May his name increase as long as the sun shines, and let men bless themselves by him. Let all nations call him blessed. Blessed be Yahweh God, the God of Israel, who alone works wonders. Blessed be his glorious name forever, and may the whole earth be filled with his glory. Amen and amen. The prayers of David, the son of Jesse, are thus ended. If you want to know about the exercise of power when you're leading people, there is not a better place to go than this, because this is the prayer either of David for his son or Solomon as he's beginning his reign to be king. And he asks for peace and prosperity and safe borders and good relations with nations around. In fact, a good deal of fear and respect from the nations around, so that they will not threaten your borders. And he casts a wide view when he talks about the nations that surround. He goes all the way to the Atlantic Ocean. He goes all the way to Tarshish, which is Spain. He goes all the way to the Rock of Gibraltar. And then he also goes south into Africa, as far as they would have knowledge, to the old Nubian kingdom, that's Sheba. And then the Sabaeans are the nomadic tribes in the Arabian desert. And so he's casting a large view of the peoples they have to deal with. And he's saying, let them have a sense of fear and respect for this king, so that he has peace and prosperity, enjoys peace and prosperity. And so all those things are asked, but for specific purposes. And there are three. One is, well, two, but one of them has like two parts: righteousness. The first thing is righteousness. In fact, righteousness is really the whole thing, but it is expressed in three parts. Let me see if I can muddy the waters even more. Let the king be a king of righteousness. And the first big thing is that God himself is acknowledged. God's otherness is acknowledged. Let them fear God, capital Thee, while the sun endures. May God fill the whole earth with his glory. So it's about the promotion of the knowledge of God. Isaiah will talk about in Isaiah 2, all the nations streaming to the mountain of Jehovah. And there is this sense of the king being a light to the nations, and filling the world that he has influence on with the knowledge of God. And then there's the whole notion of doing right, just generally doing right, what God considers right, and then specifically doing right by the people who are the weakest, by the oppressed, by the afflicted, by the widow, by the orphan. Pure and undefiled religion is to visit the fatherless and the widows in their distress. This is the king's first priority. The blood of the oppressed is dear to him. His first priority is to not establish his own wealth and influence. His first priority is not to cater to the wealthy and powerful because you need them to get your things done. The first priority of a leader is to protect those who are the weakest in the culture, in the society, and that's mentioned over and over again. We looked at the minor prophets not long ago, And over again in every one of the minor prophets, they are being condemned for their social injustice in addition to their idolatry, and they're making foreign alliances. But there it is. And that's what David or Solomon prays for Solomon's reign and for Rehoboam's reign later on in Psalm 72. Okay, we're going to look at the other psalm by Solomon that Solomon's name is attached to. I've taken 11 minutes of your time today. Sorry about that. We're going to look at Psalm 127 next time. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word.